I showed up unannounced at my son's home on Thanksgiving. My grandson stood outside, trembling in just a t-shirt and shorts in 5 degrees weather. Inside, the family feasted on turkey. I burst in with 6 words. Shock filled their faces. Can you picture pure rage? That's what boiled in my gut when I found my own grandson, just a kid, shivering blue-lipped on his doorstep in freezing Thanksgiving weather. Inside, his family, my daughter among them, was laughing and feasting. What happened next wasn't just a confrontation. It was a reckoning that changed everything, starting with 6 words that made their faces drain of color. My phone had buzzed against the dashboard, a text from my neighbor. Saw police cars at the Hendersons again, domestic situation, made me think of you and your family worries. I just stared at those words, my old Chevy idling in their driveway. The Hendersons. Martha, my wife, used to worry about their grandson too, back when she was still alive. Now it was just me, and that gnawing feeling in my gut whenever I thought about my daughter Leona's marriage. The clock read, 2:30 p.m. Time to go. I backed out, snow already falling, fat flakes making the roads treacherous. Led Zeppelin played something heavy on the radio, matching my mood. Beside me, 2 gift bags for Amos, a genuine leather baseball glove that cost me a small fortune, and a stack of comic books. He was 18 now, probably thought he was too old, but Martha always said, "You're never too old for heroes. Family is all we have left." She'd been gone 6 months, and every family gathering felt precious fragile. The drive was slow, the snow relentless. I tried calling Leona, wanted to let them know I was coming, but it went straight to voicemail. Strange, I thought. Usually someone's home on Thanksgiving afternoon. At a gas station, grabbing coffee and Amos's favorite peppermints, the young clerk warned me about the worsening roads. 3 accidents already today. Be careful out there. My gut tightened. I kept thinking about Amos. We'd gone fishing at Lake Erie last summer, and he caught his first bass, grinning like he'd won the lottery. That's when I'd seen it, a bruise on his arm. He mumbled something about falling off his bike, but it looked wrong. Too precise, like finger marks. I should have pressed harder. Martha would have known. As I pulled into Leona's subdivision, the streets were a postcard of suburban holiday cheer. Warm lights spilled from windows. Families gathered, happy. I imagined Amos running to hug me, like he used to. Maybe, just maybe, this Thanksgiving could be a new start for our family, the kind Martha always dreamed of. Then I saw him, Amos, sitting on the front steps of the house, hunched over, arms wrapped around his knees. No coat, no hat, just a thin shirt and jeans already dusted with snow. His shoulders shook, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, throwing open my truck door. The wind hit me, carrying ice crystals that stung my face. In the few seconds it took to reach him, I saw his lips blue. His hands pressed tight against his body. "Amos!" I yelled, breaking into a run. "What are you doing out here?" Relief flooded his eyes, almost breaking my heart. His face was pale, almost gray, with red patches where the cold had bitten. "Grandpa!" His voice was a bare whisper, teeth chattering. "I can't." I was already pulling off my heavy winter coat, wrapping it around him. He was ice cold, trembling like a leaf. "Can't what?" I helped him stand, steadying him. "How long have you been sitting out here?" "I'm not allowed," he whispered, pulling my coat tighter. "I'm not allowed to go in the house." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Behind us, through the brightly lit windows, I could hear laughter, a TV, the warm glow of a family celebration. And my grandson was freezing on the front steps, like some kind of punishment. "Not allowed." My voice came out sharper than I intended, anger igniting a fire in my chest. "This is your home." Amos flinched, and I immediately softened my tone. "Please don't make it worse for me," he begged, glancing nervously at the door. "Please, Grandpa, if Wilbur hears you." I looked at the house. Really looked. The decorations, the warm lights, the sounds of celebration. Then at Amos, blue-lipped, shivering in clothes barely fit for autumn. "How long, Amos?" I kept my voice gentle but firm. "How long have you been out here?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Since this morning." "This morning." I checked my watch. 3:15 p.m. "Son, it's below freezing out here. You could get frostbite." I tried the front door. Locked. Of course, it was locked. They'd locked him out of his own home on Thanksgiving and left him to freeze while they enjoyed dinner. "We need to get you warm," I said, guiding him to the truck. "Come on." The way he'd flinched. The bruise from fishing. The careful way he moved, like someone who'd learned to make himself small. This wasn't the first time. This was a pattern. "Amos," I said, cranking the heat to full blast and wrapping another blanket around him, holding his numb hands between mine. "What happened this morning?" He stared at his hands, still shaking. I was helping Mom with the turkey. She asked me to check on it while she showered. I just forgot to turn off the oven timer when I took it out to baste it. It got a little burn on top. Not ruined, just darker than usual. He finally looked at me, fear in his eyes. Wilbur came in and saw it, and he lost it. My jaw clenched. Lost it? How? Started yelling about how I'd ruined the whole holiday, so the guests would think Mom couldn't cook. That I was an embarrassment. Amos pulled the blanket tighter. Then he said I needed to think about my actions and couldn't come back inside until I'd learned some responsibility. And your mother? The question came out harder than I intended. He looked away. She tried to say something at first, but Wilbur told her to stay out of it. Said this was between him and me. She didn't say anything after that. Amos, what time did this happen? Around 11 this morning. 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours, and whether that could kill someone over a slightly burnt turkey. I had to take several deep breaths. Has this happened before? He wrestled with the truth, then whispered. Sometimes, when I mess up. Last month, he made me stand in the garage all night because I forgot to take out the trash. Once, he locked me in the basement for 2 days because I accidentally broke one of his beer bottles. Each word felt like a punch to my gut. I looked at the smart, kind boy. Your mother knows about this? Amos nodded miserably. She says Wilbur's just trying to teach me discipline, that I need to be more responsible. Maybe she's right. Maybe I just don't. Don't you dare blame yourself for this. I turned to face him fully. What that man is doing to you isn't discipline, it's abuse, and it's going to stop today. His eyes went wide with panic. No, Grandpa, please. If you make a scene, he'll just take it out on me later. He always does. I looked at the house again, still glowing, still full of laughter. Inside, my daughter was serving dinner while her son sat freezing in my truck, too afraid to ask for basic human decency. Listen to me, I said, taking his hands again. You're 18. You don't have to live like this anymore, and I'm not going to let you. But where would I go? I don't have any money. You'll come home with me, I said, the decision crystallizing. Tonight. We'll figure out the rest later. Hope and terror warred in his expression. He won't let me leave, Amos said quietly. He'll say I stole something, or that you're kidnapping me. I looked at the house again, and something cold and hard settled in my chest. Martha had been the diplomatic one. But Martha wasn't here, and diplomacy hadn't protected my grandson from 4 hours in near-freezing weather. Let me worry about Wilbur, I said, opening the truck door. Right now, we're going to get your things. I stepped out into the snow, my boots crunching. Amos scrambled out, my coat still wrapped around him. The front door was still locked, but I had no intention of knocking. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? I asked, looking at him closely. Faint bruises along his jawline, hidden by shadows in the cold. I tried to hint, he whispered. But you always talk to Mom, and she. A memory hit me. Last month, Amos had called, his voice small. Asterisk Grandpa, Wilbur says I can't eat dinner with them anymore. Says I have to earn my way back to the table. Asterisk I'd laughed it off, called Leona, and she brushed it aside with that practiced ease she developed since marrying Wilbur. Asterisk Dad, you're overreacting. It's just normal family discipline. Amos exaggerates everything. Asterisk another memory. Asterisk Mom, Wilbur yelled at me again about leaving dishes in the sink. He made me wash every dish in the house twice. Asterisk Leona's sigh. Asterisk, he's just being dramatic. Wilbur's trying to teach him responsibility. Asterisk, how long has he been treating you like this? Since Mom married him 3 years ago. Amos's voice was barely audible. It started small, making me redo chores. Then it got worse. I remember the fishing trip, how he'd seemed reluctant to go home. The basement incident. The garage. Asterisk last winter, he locked me out for forgetting to shovel the driveway. I slept in your truck when you visited for Christmas Eve. Asterisk my truck. He'd slept in my truck on Christmas Eve while I was inside, enjoying eggnog, thinking what a wonderful family holiday we were having. Guilt hit me like a physical blow. Your mother knows about all of this? Amos nodded miserably. She says Wilbur's just trying to make me a better person, that I need to stop being so sensitive and learn to follow rules. The rage was building now, hot and focused. My vision sharpened. Martha used to warn me about my temper, told me to count to 10. But Martha wasn't here, and counting wouldn't help my grandson. I stood up, Amos still wrapped in my coat. Come on, we're going inside. Grandpa, no. Please, if you make a scene, he'll just what? I turned to him. Make you sleep outside? Beat you? Starve you? Son, it can't get much worse than what's already happening. Amos looked at the door, terror in his eyes. You don't understand how he gets when someone challenges him. But I was already walking. The front door looked solid, expensive. Wilbur's pride. I didn't bother knocking. My boot hit the door, just beside the lock with all the force my 68-year-old body could muster. Decades of factory work had left me stronger than most men half my age. Though it splintered with a crack that echoed through the neighborhood, and the door slammed open so hard it bounced off the wall. Warm air rushed out, carrying the smell of roasted turkey and the sound of shocked silence. I stepped into the entryway, Amos close behind me, and took in the scene. The dining room table, set like a magazine spread. Wilbur sat at the head, carving knife in hand. Leona beside him in a green dress. A young girl, maybe 10, fork halfway to her mouth. They were all frozen, like someone had hit pause on their perfect holiday moment. The contrast hit me. They sat warm and comfortable, feasting, while Amos had been shivering outside for over 4 hours. The turkey looked golden and beautiful, probably the replacement for the one Amos had supposedly ruined. Everything pristine, peaceful. Everything except the fact that they'd left a child outside to freeze. Have you completely lost your minds? My voice boomed, and the little girl dropped her fork with a clatter. Leona's face went white. The serving spoon in her hand hit the table, sending gravy spattering. Dad! Leona's voice was a squeak. What are you doing here? How did you? While you're sitting here feasting like royalty, that boy was freezing outside. I pointed directly at Amos. 4 hours, Leona. 4 hours, and whether that could have killed him. Wilbur slowly set down his knife and rose. Bigger than I remembered. Probably 50 pounds heavier, but I'd been in my share of fights. Size didn't always matter when you were angry enough. Who gave you permission to enter my house? His voice was controlled but dangerous. This is private property, and you're trespassing. He puffed out his chest, moving toward us, predatory. Private property? I stepped forward. You mean the property where you locked my grandson outside to freeze while you ate dinner? The little girl started crying. Leona reached to comfort her, but her eyes never left mine, torn between father and husband. This is a private family matter, Wilbur said, his voice rising. And you have no business. No business. Heat rose in my face. That's my grandson you nearly killed with your private family matter. Amos pressed closer, trembling with fear. This was likely the first time anyone had stood up to Wilbur in his own house. It was about to get ugly. The cheerful holiday music playing softly in the background was a sick joke. I pointed at Amos. Look at him, Wilbur. Really, look at what you've done. Wilbur crossed his arms, chin lifted. The boy ruined our holiday. He needed to learn a lesson about responsibility and consequences. A lesson? I could barely believe what I was hearing. You nearly froze a child to death over a slightly burnt turkey. He's 18, not a child, and this is my house with my rules. Wilbur's voice took on that patronizing tone. I'm trying to teach him discipline, something his mother obviously failed to do in his first 17 years. Leona flinched but said nothing, just sat there watching. Discipline, I spat. I stepped closer. That's called child abuse, and you're lucky I don't call the police right now. Wilbur actually laughed, a cold, grating sound. He forgot to turn off a timer and ruined a $20 turkey. I sent him outside to think about his actions. That's not abuse. That's parenting. He waved a dismissive hand. 4 hours in 5-degree weather. He's being dramatic. Look at him, he's fine. A little cold never hurt anyone. I looked at Amos, blue-lipped and shaking. Fine. This man thought hypothermia was fine. Dad, please. Leona finally spoke, her voice shaky. Don't ruin our holiday. We can discuss this later as a family. Ruin your holiday? I stared at my daughter. Your son was sitting outside freezing while you ate dinner, and you're worried about me ruining your holiday? She looked down at her plate. Wilbur was he was trying to teach Amos responsibility. Sometimes boys need firm guidance. Firm guidance. My voice cracked with disbelief. Leona, when you were 18 and you dented my truck, did I lock you outside in a blizzard? When you failed your math test, did I make you sleep in the garage? That's different, she whispered. How? How is it different? Wilbur stepped between us, face red with anger. Because this is my house, and Amos is not my biological son. I have every right to discipline him as I see fit. There it was. The truth. Amos wasn't his blood, so Amos didn't matter. He was just an inconvenience. You have 30 seconds to apologize to my grandson, I said, my voice deadly quiet. 30 seconds to show some basic human decency. Wilbur's laugh was even colder. I don't owe that boy anything. If he doesn't like my rules, he can find somewhere else to live. The little girl was crying harder. Leona was shushing her, but I barely heard. All I saw was Wilbur's smug face. All I thought about was Amos on those steps, believing he deserved it. Somewhere else to live, I echoed. I stepped even closer, close enough to smell wine on his breath. You're right about that. He's going somewhere else to live. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering. The movement was slow, deliberate. Wilbur's smugness faltered. Either you apologize to my grandson right now, I said deadly calm, or I call Child Protective Services and report this abuse. You wouldn't dare. He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. I'd faced down bigger men. I wasn't backing down. Try me. I started dialing. I've got plenty to tell them about leaving an 18-year-old outside in freezing weather for 4 hours. Amos gripped my arm, trembling, not from cold now, but from fear of what was coming. Dad, please. Leona finally moved, stepping between us, hands raised. Don't destroy our family over this. I'm not destroying anything. I kept my eyes locked on Wilbur. He did that when he decided to abuse my grandson. Abuse. Wilbur's laugh was harsh. I was teaching him responsibility, something his weak mother never bothered to do. Leona flinched like he'd slapped her, but didn't defend herself. Just stood there, taking it. Get out of my house, old man. Wilbur continued, voice rising. You have no authority here. Amos is my responsibility now. Your responsibility? I looked around the perfect dining room, then back at my grandson's bruised face. Is this how you handle responsibility? Locking children outside to freeze. The younger daughter cried harder. He's not a child. He's 18, Wilbur said, straightening his shoulders. And in my house, adults who can't follow simple instructions face adult consequences. Adult consequences for forgetting a timer, for being careless and destructive, for ruining our holiday and embarrassing this family in front of our guests. Wilbur gestured to the empty chairs. They'd had guests. People had been here, eating dinner, while Amos sat outside. And none of them had questioned it. None of them had said a word. Grandpa, let's just go, Amos whispered. Please, I don't want to cause any more problems. The defeat in his voice broke something inside me. This boy, beaten down so thoroughly, thought he was the problem. You're not causing problems, son, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You never were. I turned back to Wilbur. My decision crystallized. You have 30 seconds to apologize to my grandson for what you did today. I'm not apologizing for anything. Wilbur crossed his arms, defiant. And I'm certainly not taking orders from some bitter old man who can't accept that his precious grandson needed discipline. Then we're done here. I closed the phone and put it back in my pocket. Amos, go get your things. You're coming home with me. The silence was deafening. Even the little girl stopped crying. You can't just take him, Leona said, barely a whisper. Watch me. I placed my hand firmly on Amos's shoulder, guiding him toward the stairs. Go pack whatever you need. We're leaving. Dad, you can't do this. Leona followed, panic in her voice. You can't just walk into our house and take my son. I can and I am, I said, staying between Amos and the rest of them. Unless you prefer, I call the authorities and let them sort it out. Amos led the way up the narrow staircase to a small room at the back of the house. Barely big enough for a twin bed, no heat vent, a north-facing window. It looked more like a storage room than a bedroom. This is where you sleep? I asked. He nodded, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. Wilbur says the basement room is for guests, and the other upstairs room is for my sister, Dot. He didn't even say our sister. He was an outsider in his own home. Take everything that matters to you, I said, standing guard. We're not coming back for anything. Amos, think about what you're doing. Leona appeared in the doorway, tears streaming. This is your home, your family. Some family, Amos muttered, folding a sweatshirt. Real families don't lock each other outside to freeze. Wilbur was just trying to teach you responsibility. By giving me hypothermia. Amos looked at his mother, 3 years of hurt and disappointment in his eyes. Mom, he made me sleep in the garage last week because I left a glass in the sink. A glass? That's not normal. Leona's face crumpled. He has high standards. He wants you to be better. He wants me gone, Amos said quietly, zipping his bag. And you know it. We made our way downstairs. Wilbur waited at the bottom like a bouncer. You leave my house, boy, and you don't come back ever. Fine by me, Amos said, and I heard real strength in his voice for the first time all day. The front door was still hanging open from where I'd kicked it in. Cold air poured in, making the decorations flutter. My truck idled outside. Amos! Leona called out as we reached the door. Please don't do this. I love you. He stopped, turned back to look at her one last time. If you love me, Mom, you wouldn't have let this happen. We walked to the truck in silence. I threw his bag in the bed, helped him into the passenger seat, then got in myself. Through the front window, I could see them. Leona crying, Wilbur red-faced with rage, the little girl peeking. "You ready?" I asked, putting the truck in reverse. "I've been ready for 3 years," Amos said, pulling my coat tighter. I backed out, past the other decorated houses where normal families were finishing dinner. The radio played classic rock. The heater worked perfectly. For the first time, Amos looked like he could breathe. "Thank you, Grandpa," he said quietly. "I can't believe you came for me." "I should have come sooner," I said, meaning every word. "I should have seen what was happening. I tried to tell you, but I didn't know how." We drove in comfortable silence. This boy needed protection, a safe place to heal and grow. "Tell me about college," I said. "What are you studying?" "Engineering," he said, his voice stronger. "Mechanical engineering, like you used to do at the factory. Like grandfather, like grandson." I smiled, thinking of Martha, how proud she'd be. "We'll figure out tuition. Don't you worry about that." "Grandpa, I don't want to be a burden." "Son, you're not a burden. You're family, and family takes care of each other." My driveway looked smaller now with both trucks side by side, but the house seemed to glow with welcome. I'd left the porch light on, and I was grateful for that small beacon. "Home sweet home," I said, helping Amos with his bag. The key turned easily, and warm air rushed out. The house smelled like coffee and Martha's lavender sachets. It wasn't much, a modest ranch, but it was ours. "You remember where the guest room is?" I asked. "Yeah, down the hall." He looked around with relief. "It's so warm in here." Thermostat set to 72 year-round. "Your grandmother always said life was too short to be cold in your own house." I showed him to the guest room. It was simple, comfortable. A double bed with one of Martha's quilts, photos of Amos at various ages. This had always been his room when he visited, and seeing him here now felt right. "I'll get some dinner started," I said. "Chicken in the freezer." "Can I help?" he asked, desperately wanting to be useful. "Sure, but you don't have to. This is your home now, not a job." We worked together, and gradually the day's tension left his shoulders. "Tell me more about what's been happening," I said, as I seasoned the chicken. "Start from the beginning, when your mother married Wilbur." Amos was quiet. It started small, little comments about how I loaded the dishwasher wrong. Then it got bigger. He controls everything. When I eat, what I eat, when I can shower, when I can use the phone. His voice got smaller. He made Mom choose between him and me, and she chose him. I had to grip the counter. "What do you mean she chose him?" "Last Christmas, when you visited, remember how I was quiet during dinner? Wilbur had told me I wasn't allowed to speak unless someone asked me a direct question. And Mom didn't say anything to stop him. The memory hit me like a punch to the gut. I thought he was just being a moody teenager. Why doesn't your mother stand up to him?" "She's scared." Amos started chopping carrots. "She told me once that if she leaves him, she'll lose the house and have to move back to that apartment. She can't afford to take care of us on her own." I slid the chicken into the oven and started a fire in the living room fireplace. "Come sit with me," I said when the fire was crackling. "Tell me about the good things. Tell me about school, about your friends." We settled into the chairs. "For the first time all day," Amos smiled. "I made Dean's List last semester, and I've got this friend Jake who's teaching me to play guitar." "Your grandmother always wanted to learn guitar," I said, pointing to a photo of Martha holding an acoustic. "She said music was the language of a soul." I remember her saying that. Amos studied the photo. "I miss her." "Me too, son. Me too." We talked until dinner was done, sharing memories of Martha and planning for Amos's spring semester. The house felt alive again. As we ate our simple meal, I looked at my grandson. The fear was gone from his eyes, replaced by hope. "We'll call the college tomorrow," I said. "Make sure your financial aid is sorted out. And we'll look into a part-time job if you want one." "Grandpa, you don't have to do all this for me." "Yes, I do." I met his eyes. "That's what family's for." The phone rang, just as we finished dessert. Leftover pie. The sound cut through our peaceful evening, and Amos tensed up. "Leona." My jaw clenched. Then, 3 sharp knocks on the front door. Not a neighbor, but an authoritative pounding. Amos nearly dropped his coffee mug. "Grandpa, stay behind me," I said, moving to the door. More insistent knocking, multiple voices. I flipped on the porch light. 2 uniformed police officers stood on my doorstep, and behind them, like predators, were Wilbur and Leona. "Mr. Burke," the lead officer called out. "Police, we need to speak with you." I took a deep breath and opened the door, blocking their view of Amos. "What can I do for you, officers?" Wilbur immediately stepped forward, pointing an accusatory finger. "Officer, this man kidnapped my stepson. He broke into our house and took the boy without permission." The officer held up a hand. "Sir, we need to sort this out. Mr. Burke, is there a young man named Amos Green on these premises?" "Yes," I said. "My grandson is here. He kidnapped him." Wilbur's voice rose dramatically. "Broke down our door like some kind of criminal and dragged the boy away from his family." "Is the young man here voluntarily?" the second officer asked. Before I could answer, Amos appeared beside me, still wrapped in the blanket. His voice was quiet, clear. "I want to stay with my grandpa." Wilbur's face flushed red. "See? He's been filling the boy's head with lies, turning him against his own family." "What lies?" I stepped forward. "The truth about how you left him outside in freezing weather for 4 hours. The truth about how you've been abusing him for 3 years. Abuse." Wilbur laughed, forced. "I was teaching him responsibility." The officer looked between us. "Mr. Burke, we're going to need everyone to come inside so we can discuss this properly." I stepped back reluctantly. Wilbur followed, Leona trailing, eyes fixed on the floor. She looked smaller, diminished. "Now then," the officer said, "let's start from the beginning, Mr. Green. You claim this man kidnapped your stepson." "Absolutely." Wilbur straightened his shoulders, putting on his reasonable authority figure performance. "I came home from work to find my front door broken and Amos gone. When I called around, neighbors said they saw an older man forcing the boy into a truck." "Forcing?" I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. "Officer, I rescued my grandson from child abuse." "That's what he keeps saying," Wilbur said, shaking his head sadly. "But the truth is, he's never approved of my marriage to his daughter. He's been looking for any excuse to cause trouble." The officer turned to Amos. "Son, did this man force you to come with him?" "No, sir." Amos's voice was barely a whisper. "He saved me." "Saved you from what?" Amos glanced nervously at Wilbur, then back at the officer. "From freezing to death on the front porch." The second officer looked up from his notepad. "Explain that." "I accidentally burned the turkey this morning. Wilbur made me sit outside in the cold to think about my actions. I was out there for over 4 hours in 5-degree weather." "He's exaggerating," Wilbur said quickly. "It was maybe an hour, and he was dressed warmly." "An hour?" I stared at him. "Officer, I have witnesses. My grandson was sitting on that porch in a thin shirt and jeans when I arrived at 3:15. He'd been there since 11 in the morning." The first officer looked at Wilbur. "Sir, is it true you made the young man sit outside as punishment?" "Briefly, yes, but he's making it sound worse than it was." Wilbur's facade cracked. "Look, sometimes teenagers need firm discipline." His mother and I agreed. Mom didn't agree to anything. Amos said, his voice getting stronger. "She just didn't stop you." All eyes turned to Leona. She stood by the doorway, hands clasped, ready to run. "Ma'am," the officer prompted, "what's your version of events?" Leona looked like a woman on a cliff edge. Her hands shook as she glanced between Wilbur's expectant face and Amos's hopeful eyes. "Mrs. Green," the officer said gently, "we need to know what really happened today." Wilbur moved closer to his wife, his posture subtly intimidating. "Tell them, honey. Tell them how your father has been poisoning Amos against our family." The officer noticed. "Sir, please step back and let your wife speak for herself." Leona's voice was a whisper. She cleared her throat. "Amos did burn the turkey this morning, and the officer prompted. Wilbur was upset, very upset. Her eyes darted to her husband, then quickly away. He said Amos needed to learn responsibility by sitting outside. In freezing weather. Leona nodded miserably. Wilbur said it would teach him to be more careful. "How long was he outside, ma'am?" Another glance at Wilbur, who stood rigid with anger. Since around 11. "Until when?" "Until my father arrived," she whispered. "Around 3:15. The officer did the math. Over 4 hours in 5-degree weather. "She's making it sound worse than it was," Wilbur interjected. "He could have come inside any time if he'd apologized and shown some remorse." "No, he couldn't," Leona said suddenly. Everyone stared at her. "You locked the door. You told me not to let him in no matter what." The silence was deafening. Wilbur's face went white, then red. "Leona," he said, dangerously quiet. "What are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth." She looked at Amos, tears forming. "For once in 3 years, I'm telling the truth." The officer leaned forward. "Mrs. Green, has this kind of punishment happened before?" "Yes." The word burst out of her. "He's made Amos sleep in the garage, in the basement. He's locked him out of the house overnight." Her voice grew stronger. "He controls when Amos can eat, when he can shower, when he can speak at the dinner table. Leona, shut up! Wilbur's mask finally slipped. You have no idea what you're doing. You'll destroy everything we've built. What we've built? She turned on him with sudden fury. What have we built except fear and misery? Look at my son. Look what you've done to him. I watched Amos's face transform as his mother finally stood up for him. 3 years of doubt and self-blame seemed to melt away. The first officer stood up and moved toward Wilbur. Sir, I'm going to need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back. This is ridiculous. Wilbur backed toward the door. You're going to arrest me based on the word of a bitter old man and his delusional daughter. Based on the physical evidence and multiple corroborating testimonies about child endangerment, the officer said calmly, pulling out his handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. As they read Wilbur his rights and led him toward the door, he turned back to Leona, pure venom in his eyes. You'll regret this betrayal. You'll lose everything. The house, the money, everything. You'll be nothing without me. I'd rather be nothing than watch you hurt my son, she said. And for the first time in years, she sounded like the strong woman who'd raised Amos on her own. The door closed behind them, leaving the three of us alone. Leona collapsed into a chair, deep, wrenching sobs coming from years of buried pain. Amos went to her immediately, kneeling. Mom, it's okay. It's over now. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have protected you. I should have been stronger. You were strong tonight, I said, settling back by the fireplace. When it mattered most, you chose your son over your husband. That took real courage. The fire crackled peacefully. For the first time in months, my house felt like a real home again. Not just because my family was safe, but because the truth had finally been spoken and justice was being served. Amos looked up at me. What happens now, Grandpa? Now we heal, I said simply. We take our time and we heal. 4 months later, morning sun streamed through my kitchen window. Leona flipped pancakes. Amos sat at the table, reviewing his acceptance letter from Ohio State's engineering program. Full scholarship, he said for the 10th time that week. They're actually paying me to go to school. That's what happens when you're brilliant and work hard, Leona said, sliding pancakes onto his plate. She looked different now, stronger, more confident. Her part-time job at the library had given her independence, and the divorce settlement enough money to start over. Your grandmother would have been so proud, I said, settling into my chair with coffee. The kitchen felt alive again, full of conversation and laughter. Leona had moved in permanently. The guest room was hers, and we'd converted the basement into a proper bedroom for Amos, not a punishment cell, but a comfortable retreat. Dad, are you sure you don't mind us staying here indefinitely? Leona asked. I know you're used to your independence. Independence is overrated, I said, meaning every word. Family is what matters. Besides, who else is going to make sure Amos doesn't burn down the kitchen when he tries to cook? That was one time. Amos protested, laughing. And the fire was very small. The phone rang, and Leona answered. Burke residence. Oh, hi, Jake. Yes, he's here. Guitar practice at 4. Sure, I'll tell him. She hung up. Your friend Jake wants to know if you're still practicing for the talent show. Talent show? I raised an eyebrow. You didn't tell me about any talent show? Amos grinned, looking more like the confident young man he was supposed to be. It's nothing big. Jake and I are doing an acoustic set. Couple of classic rock songs you'd probably recognize. I'll be in the front row, I promised. After breakfast, I found Leona in the living room, arranging new family photos on the mantel alongside Martha's pictures. There was one from Amos's graduation, one from our fishing trip, and one from Christmas morning, our first real family Christmas in years. Any word from Wilbur? I asked. His lawyer called yesterday. Anger management therapy is going well, apparently, but he lost his job at the supermarket. She shrugged. He's moving back to Cleveland to live with his sister. Good. The farther away, the better. I feel sorry for him sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember what he did to Amos, and the feeling passes pretty quickly. That afternoon, while Amos was at guitar practice, Leona and I worked in the garden, preparing the soil for Martha's vegetable patch. Spring was coming early. Dad, Leona said, pulling weeds with focused determination. I need to thank you again for what you did. If you hadn't come that day. You don't need to thank me, I said. I was just doing what any grandfather would do. No, you weren't. You risked everything to save him. You could have been arrested, charged with kidnapping. But I wasn't. Truth has a way of winning out in the end. She smiled, wiping dirt from her hands. Martha used to say that. She was a smart woman. That evening, we settled into our routine. Dinner together, followed by a game show or movie. It wasn't exciting or glamorous, but it was exactly what we all needed. Predictable, peaceful, safe. Amos had his guitar out, quietly practicing in the corner while Leona worked on a crossword and I read the newspaper. Normal family activities that had seemed impossible just a few months ago. Grandpa, Amos said during a commercial break, I've been thinking about changing my major. To what? Social work, maybe counseling. He put down his guitar and looked at me seriously. I want to help other kids who are going through what I went through. I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost took my breath away. This young man, who had every right to be bitter and angry, wanted to use his experience to help others. That's a fine goal, I said. Your grandmother always said the best way to heal from pain is to help others avoid it. Did she really say that? She did, along with about 1,000 other pieces of wisdom. I should have listened more carefully. As the evening wore on and Leona dozed in her chair, Amos and I stepped out onto the back porch to look at the stars. The night was clear and cold, but nothing like that terrible Thanksgiving when I'd found him freezing on Wilbur's doorstep. Ready for fishing season to open? I asked. Can't wait. Think we'll catch anything bigger than last year? With your luck, probably catch a whale. We stood in comfortable silence, 2 generations of Berkmen who'd found their way back to each other through crisis and truth. In a few months, Amos would head off to college, and eventually he'd build his own life and family. But the foundation was solid now, built on honesty and protection, and the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return. Grandpa, Amos said as we headed back inside. Yeah, thank you for coming to get me. Thank you for being worth saving. The house was warm and bright as we locked up for the night. 3 people who'd learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up when it matters most, telling the truth even when it's hard, and protecting the people you love, no matter what the cost. Martha would have been proud of all of us. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to stand up for someone you loved against overwhelming odds? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.